Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. Thank you to all of our viewers, all of our supporters for tuning in to this briefing. Thank you to everyone who has submitted questions so that we can get you the most relevant information about this war. It's a great honor to be joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF. General, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure, Moshe.
General, let's start off with an important question, which is the state of affairs on the Egypt-Gaza border. What is the status right now of control over the Philadelphia corridor? And also, is there smuggling still happening from Egypt into Gaza?
So actually, yesterday evening, I had the pleasure to speak with a combat engineer battalion, Battalion 271, a battalion of reservists from the combat engineers, who just finished 2 months in Rafah area, dealing with the tunnels along the Egyptian border. So I had the chance to really hear firsthand how they're dealing with the tunnels. They work together with the battalion I commanded in the past, Battalion 605, in really finding and destroying the tunnels along the Egyptian border. Overall, Israel has control over all the tunnels along the Philadelphia corridor. The IDF has broadened dramatically this corridor in a way that enables to control well the whole area and really make sure that there is no smuggling from Egypt into Gaza. So as far as we know, underground and above ground, the IDF is controlling the Egyptian border on the Gazan side, really making sure that the oxygen of Hamas is shut down and they cannot rebuild themselves by smuggling from Egypt. As long as we stay in Philadelphia, we'll be able to prevent any buildup of capabilities of Hamas inside Gaza.
Thank you. So if that border is sealed right now, is there any way that Hamas is resupplying with weapons, with munitions, or that's it? There's no other entry points into Hamas hands?
So theoretically, they could try and smuggle through the humanitarian aid that is coming into Gaza or through the sea. The Navy is controlling the sea and making sure there is no smuggling from the sea. But again, there's never 100%. We don't know. And I know there have been attempts to also smuggle capabilities in trucks that are coming from Egypt with the humanitarian aid. And this is the responsibility of COGAT and the units on the border to really check those trucks and make sure they're not smuggling anything into Gaza. But again, this kind of smuggling, it's not at the level of what we saw before in Gaza. And the IDF is not only controlling the Egyptian border, but also the IDF destroyed all the main industries that were inside Gaza, and there were huge military industries producing rockets and missiles and improvised explosive devices and other things inside Gaza. The IDF destroyed most of them, if not all of them. Now they're trying to produce locally in rooms, in classrooms, really trying to have some homemade capabilities. But the IDF is also dealing with that and continuing again and again to operate in different areas in Gaza, seizing more and more capabilities, destroying infrastructure, destroying tunnels and the headquarters. We saw a very successful attack of the IDF, killing around 35 terrorists in one hit that were located in a mosque inside the school. So they're trying to take these civilian places and rebuild their headquarters. And the IDF is constantly attacking these attempts, degrading all the time Hamas capabilities.
It's very good to hear that the smuggling from Egypt into Gaza has stopped. I'm wondering if more broadly you can address the question about smuggling from Egypt into Israel, and also smuggling from Jordan into Israel. Are those two issues right now that are being dealt with?
So Egypt is a completely different scenario because in Egypt, we build a very sophisticated fence and also radars and outposts that enable us to control pretty well the Egyptian border all the way to Eilat. I remember when I commanded this border in 2008, 2010, we didn't even have a fence. And at that time, there were many events where they were smuggling different things, a lot of drugs. Before that, there were also women smuggled and of course, terrorists who try to penetrate the active. It's still challenging, but overall, we cannot say Jordanian border valley. Because today, this border, and it's a very long border, it doesn't have a sophisticated fence. It doesn't have sophisticated radars the way we have it in all other borders. And the amount of soldiers along the Jordan Valley is not enough. And now the army is starting to plan a division, a new division that will be responsible of all this border. It's not that it's empty. We have battalions. There is not one division that is responsible for the whole border. So now the army wants to invest more, but we need to invest also in infrastructure and build sophisticated fence and sophisticated capabilities to really manage this border with drones, with radars, and cameras, and everything needed to really be able to control and prevent smuggling. We know that in the last few months, about 4,000 people managed to infiltrate through these borders from all over the world. People who, many of them are seeking work. They because of there is lack of workers, because Palestinians are not allowed to go into Israel and work. This brings people from different places in the world who are looking for jobs, and they're being smuggled into Israel. Now, always, when you have a smuggling route, this route is then used for terror. So we understand that it's crucial to close these smuggling routes and really make sure that this doesn't become a terror hub. We already saw many smuggling of weapons into the area of Judea and Samaria, and it's something that needs to be dealt with and stopped.
Is there a concern that that smuggling route can be used as an entry point for terrorists, as you said, but in an October 7th type attack where they just pour in through the border, or is there enough of a barrier or a buffer between that border and, let's say, Ma'ale Adumim or the other communities in the Jordan Valley where that wouldn't be a concern?
So I think that it is a concern. Again, nothing looks like the way Gaza looked at the 6th of October or Lebanon with Hezbollah on our borders. But in the southern part of Syria, there is a buildup of militias that are on the Jordanian border, and they might cross to the Jordanian side and storm towns in the Jordan Valley. It can also happen in the southern part of the Golan Heights. So Israel needs to be very alert. The Iranians are amassing forces along our borders, not only in Gaza and in Lebanon, but also in the Golan Heights and near the Jordanian border. And we definitely need to be alert and ready to move and deal with these forces that are now along our borders.
All right, General, I want to ask you an impossible question, so I apologize in advance. Discussing the threat over the Jordanian border and forces building up in Syria, and of course the looming attack from Hezbollah in Iran, what would you say is the greatest threat right now to the state of Israel?
Well, there are many threats, but I think the most direct threat we're facing at the moment is Hezbollah. It's Hezbollah's capabilities, the amount of rockets and missiles and capabilities they have. It's a close threat, unlike Iran, which is far away. So obviously, the biggest strategic threat is nuclear Iran. But looking at a more operational, tactical threat that we are facing, which is close to us, I would say Hezbollah and also these militias that are being amassed in the southern part of the Golan Heights. This is, I think, a big challenge. And Israel is in a dilemma. What's the next step? Do we still focus mostly on Gaza until we reach the goals of war? Do we shift our main efforts to Lebanon? Do we maybe go after Iran and deal with really the head of the snake? There are many dilemmas. There's not always one clear answer. But whatever we do and whatever we decide, we need to move towards victory. We need to be proactive. We need to attack and deal with our enemies and not try to stop the war, try to get ceasefires. This is not going to work for us in the long term. We need to deal with this challenge.
For sure, for sure. And just to clarify, in terms of a nuclear Iran, is that still an imminent threat, meaning beyond the Hezbollah on the border? There's no sense that Iran has slowed down their nuclear program. If anything, perhaps they're moving it along at a faster rate.
I wouldn't call it imminent because we can still deal with this. And we really need the administration to realize how grave the situation is, how important it is to deal with this. It's not something that can wait. The Iranians are moving steadily towards nuclear capabilities. The US all along said that we won't allow a nuclear Iran. And this is the moment to really do something about it, to stand strong, pose a military threat, impose harsh sanctions, very hard sanctions on Iran, and be willing to stop them militarily if needed. I don't see Iran stopping without a military threat, without willingness to fight. And if the West continues to just rely on sanctions, this is not going to work. Eventually, we'll have to stand and fight for freedom. And freedom is worthwhile fighting for.
Absolutely. Now, I want to let all of our viewers know that tomorrow we will not be having a live briefing. Tomorrow is the 9th of Av, and in deference to the day, we're going to take a break from these briefings. So we'll be back with you the following day. And the 9th of Av is a day about destruction and the horrors of Jewish past in general. You spend a lot of time here in Israel talking about victory. In contrast to the 9th of Av. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit more with us about what does victory mean? What does victory look like for Israel?
Well, first, a few words about Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, probably the saddest day for the people of Israel. Both our temples were destroyed in this day, and the destruction of the temple is not just about the destruction of the place where we worshipped God. It's about the destruction of our sovereignty, of our freedom in our country. Think that we waited a long, long time to be able to rebuild our life, a Jewish life in our ancestral homelands. 2,000 years, a long time to wait. And I think that, generally speaking, talking about victory, it's about our ability to really secure the life of our citizens, live along defensible borders, safe and secure, without terror armies terrorizing us on our borders, living a life that we can really have prosperity, that we can really cultivate a culture, and this is something that we'll have to work very hard. We cannot reach this point without destroying Hamas in Gaza, without pushing Hezbollah out of South Lebanon and hitting them very hard. And we won't be able to build a future without dealing with a nuclear Iran. And of course, we have challenges inside Israel. And the first one is to unite. I can say that today I was reading about exchange of messages between the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister, accusing each other, attacking each other. And I must say, it makes me so sad to see this, especially on Tisha B'Av, especially when we expect our government and our politicians to unite, to put everything aside, to deal with only one thing, with victory. And it's okay to have different views and disagreements about what is the next step and so on, but this is the discussion they need to have in the cabinet, not on newspapers. And I think that when we see the leading leaders of Israel really arguing in a way like babies, to me, it's very sad and very discouraging. And I would expect our leadership to behave differently, because they are sending a message of weakness to our enemies. They are hurting our deterrence. We have to remember that they are commanding hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the battlefield. Many of the soldiers have paid with their lives. And the minimum the families and soldiers expect is our leadership to be focused on what they need to be focused on, not on ego. So looking at this day of Tisha B'Av, I think that I'm not entirely sure we really learned the lesson. Some of us did, but not all of us.
Thank you. Now, many of our viewers are asking about preemptive strikes on Hezbollah in Iran. So for everyone who's asking that, I'll refer you back to our briefings last week. Every briefing last week, we spoke about that question from a different angle. So if you get our emails, check them out in the newsletter. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can view all of the briefings or any of the briefings from last week on that topic. General, you've spoken a lot about two rabbinic figures from the Second Commonwealth. I've heard you talk about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Akiva, and their different perspectives on Jewish sovereignty and Jewish survival. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about those two rabbinic figures with our viewers right now.
Yes, so I think that one of the things we can learn from leaders in the past, that on one hand, they were very connected to our heritage, to our history, to the right of the Jewish people over the land. On the other hand, when it came to practical issues, each one of them dealt with the same problems in different ways, but they didn't mix between values and problem solving. So, for example, when the Romans occupied our land, when they destroyed the second temple in Tisha B'Av, following that, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had to deal with the big question, what do we do next? And he decided that he will take all his students, we leave Jerusalem, which was a very hard decision to make, and rebuild the world of Torah study in Yavne. And because it was such a dramatic decision, even at this last day before he died, he was crying and asking himself whether he will go to heaven or hell following this decision to leave Jerusalem. Maybe 60 years later, still Roman occupation in Israel, same problem. And Rabbi Akiva looks at this problem and has a completely different solution. He says, we cannot have a reality where the Romans are occupying our lands. And he's the spiritual leader that really drove Bar Kokhba, our hero, to build an army and fight the Romans. And for 3 years, we actually managed to win and liberate the land of Israel from the Romans. But later on, they brought huge forces. And at the end of the day, destroyed Bar Kokhba's army. And following that, we experienced 2,000 years of diaspora. And I always use this example to say, when it comes to really solving problems, there can be different views, but none of them, for even 1 second, thought that this land, the land of Israel, belongs to somebody else. Most of them were strong Jews and Zionists, understanding exactly what it is to be the people of Israel and what the land of Israel is all about. And I think that the biggest problem we're facing today in the Jewish world is mixing between our values and solving problems. And once we start questioning our story and values, and for example, suggesting that any place in the land of Israel is occupied, this breaks our story. And the moment the story is not coherent, there is no story. So in IDSF, we believe that you can really, really stick to your values and believe with all your heart that we are the people of Israel. We are the ancestral people of this land. This is our land. And yet, when it comes to dealing with practical challenges, try to find solutions. We know that there are many Arabs in our land, there are Palestinians in Gaza, in Judah and Samaria. We need to think about viable solutions, but we don't approach these solutions by disregarding who we are and our identity. You don't need to give up your identity to solve problems.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you for sharing that. I think a very powerful message as we head into Tisha B'Av. Thank you to all of our viewers and all of our supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you not tomorrow, but we'll be back with you on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.